In the 9th century, a vast logistical network known as the route from the Varangians to the Greeks supposedly linked the Baltic Sea directly to the Black Sea. This Riverine artery is widely considered the geographic foundation of Kievan Rus, the first Russian state. But there is a problem. Many modern historians fiercely argue that this continuous trade route was physically impossible. They point to the current state of the East European plain, rivers too shallow to support heavy trade fleets, and vast impassable land divides. Because of these physical barriers, skeptics dismiss the entire route as an invention by Normanist historians, eager to inject Scandinavian influence into the Slavic historical record. The origin story of the first Russian state rests entirely on a geographic question. Was this exact pathway actually navigable 1,000 years ago? To evaluate the route, researchers usually rely on two flawed methods: reading 12th century manuscripts, or paddling kayaks down modern rivers. A medieval manuscript cannot provide the exact topographical logistics required to drag heavy trade fleets overland. Navigating a modern river assumes the environment has remained frozen in time. Over a millennium, riverbeds accumulate silt, water tables drop, and pathways dry out. To determine if this route was viable, we have to stop reading texts and start reconstructing the paleohydrology of the East European plain. That requires extracting limnoglacial sediment cores and mapping the physical topology of the watersheds. The ultimate test for this methodology is the central drainage divide separating the Lovat and Uzviacha rivers. Only empirical earth sciences can rebuild the 10th century landscape and solve this historical debate. Researchers focused on a sequence of 4 glacial lakes: Siverst, Ordozno, Uzviatsklai, and Kosplia, straddling this highly contested watershed divide. If Varangian trade fleets passed through here, these specific lakes had to contain continuous, deep water during the 9th and 10th centuries. To find out, geoarchaeologists extracted sediment cores from the lake beds. The bottom shows gray limnoglacial deposits from the Weichselian glaciation. The critical evidence is above, continuous brownish bands of Holocene gycha. Their unbroken presence proves these lakes never ran dry. This continuous aquatic record invalidates the claim that the watershed was an arid, impassable barrier during the Kievan Rus era. Knowing the lakes existed is only half the equation. We need to know exactly how deep they were. By studying the sediment, researchers calculated an exact accumulation rate. The lake bed rises by 0.2 to 0.4 millimeters every year. Lake Uzviatsklai has an exceptionally thick silt layer stretching down 9 meters. Today, its maximum water depth is a mere 1.4 meters. Running the accumulation rate backward 1,000 years reveals that the lake was approximately 1.6 meters deeper, simply because that silt hadn't settled yet. Furthermore, the historical baseline water level itself was at least a full meter higher than it is today. This map details the ancient shoreline. That higher water level caused Lake Uzviatsklai to push past its modern black borders and merge completely with neighboring Lake Uzman along the blue boundary. Archaeology aligns with this geo-reconstructed model. 11th century settlements were intentionally built up on the Uri-Vigori high ground to avoid this ancient flooded perimeter. Combined, the lack of silt and higher baseline yielded a greater lake 2.5 meters deep. This easily supported the draft of heavy medieval trade fleets. Even with deep lakes, fleets faced the most severe bottleneck of the entire route: the Overland Portage gap connecting the Lovat and Uzviacha river systems. A persistent myth, accepted by many modern explorers, claims the rivers were connected by the Kopanka, a flat, easily navigable canal 3 meters deep. Based on misreadings of historical texts, amateur kayak expeditions continue to blindly search this watershed for a convenient ditch. This line graph maps the definitive topographical cross-section of the actual portage zone collected by the expedition. Instead of a gentle waterway, crossing the divide required an exhausting 18-meter vertical ascent over uneven terrain. Geological surveys of the area reveal absolutely no traces of a 6-meter wide canal. The topography dictates a brutal historical reality. Early traders had to manually haul their heavy boats and cargo overland, dragging them up a steep gradient. The trade route was definitively viable, But transit required massive, organized physical labor. There was no easy, flat canal. When we place the flawed historical assumptions next to the geological reality, a striking contrast emerges. The stratigraphy confirms the water bodies were historically deep and expansive, capable of supporting immense economic traffic. Simultaneously, the topography proves the Overland Portage required hauling fleets across a high drainage divide. Today, that ancient portage zone looks like this: a vast, flat marsh lacking any navigable river channels, heavily degraded by time. By rebuilding the historical environment, we can confirm that the Baltic Black Sea waterway was the logistical lifeblood of Kievan Rus. Historians who denied its existence based on modern maps were simply looking at the wrong landscape. This debate over a single Russian trade network reveals a methodological lesson for the entire discipline of history. Treating the Earth's landscape as a static, unchanging canvas over time invariably leads to deeply flawed historical conclusions. 1,000 years of climate shifts, isostatic rebound, and steady sedimentation mean the exact rivers navigated by 9th-century traders physically do not exist anymore. Resolving deep historical mysteries requires strict cross-disciplinary rigor. Humanities cannot operate independently of the Earth's sciences. To understand the spatial backbone of ancient empires, we cannot just read their surviving texts. We have to core their rivers, map their topography, and physically rebuild their lost worlds.